My name is Aurora Hayes, and on my 28th birthday, I woke up to a nightmare $88,000 was missing from my account. My entire life savings gone in an instant. When I confronted my parents, Martha and Arthur Hayes, my mother chuckled. "What were you going to do, buy yourself a cake?" My father merely shrugged, his eyes distant. The family needed it more. They had no idea that by taking my money, they had inadvertently handed me something far more powerful, the ability to cancel the mortgage I never knew I'd co-signed. Their house was now unequivocally in my hands. Before I dive into the heart-wrenching details of this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever had family take advantage of you financially, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what happens next will show you exactly why setting boundaries is so incredibly important. A childhood defined by scarcity. Growing up, money was always a sensitive, almost suffocating topic in our household. My parents, Martha and Arthur Hayes, weren't poor by any definition, but they certainly acted like we were constantly on the brink of financial ruin. Every single purchase was scrutinized with an intensity that felt punitive, every bill payment accompanied by dramatic sighs and mournful pronouncements. My mother would clip coupons with obsessive fervor, her scissors a relentless blur, while my father would lecture us at dinner about living within our means, his voice a low, constant drone. The financial atmosphere in our home shifted dramatically when I was 12. Dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 15 long years. The company downsized, and despite his seniority, he was among the first to go. I vividly remember the night he came home. His tie loosened his eyes, vacant and hollow. He didn't say much, just poured himself a whiskey and stared blankly at the TV until well past midnight. After that, everything changed. Mom had to take on 2 grueling jobs, working mornings at a local cafe and evenings as an office cleaner. The resentment built quickly, a palpable tension in the air. "I never signed up to be the breadwinner," she'd mutter under her breath, scrubbing our already gleaming kitchen counters with furious energy. My brother Leo, 4 years my junior, was too young to fully grasp the gravity of our situation, but I felt the crushing weight of our family's financial anxiety settle heavily on my shoulders. I started babysitting at 13, desperate to contribute, but it was at 16 that I got my first real job at the local mall. I worked 20 hours a week at a clothing store, meticulously balancing my shifts with honor roll grades. The day I received my first paycheck was one I'll never forget, not because of pride, but because of what happened next. "We need to cash this," Mom said, her voice firm, plucking the envelope from my trembling hands before I could even open it. "The electric bill is due." When I timidly suggested keeping some for myself, Dad gave me that familiar, disappointed look, his gaze heavy with disapproval. "This family stays afloat together, Aurora. Everyone contributes." That became the relentless pattern. My money was family money. Their money was family money. But somehow, family money never seemed to be my money when I needed something. A relentless climb to independence. Despite this constant drain, I remained fiercely determined to break free through education. I studied relentlessly, knowing a scholarship was my only ticket out. When the acceptance letter from State University arrived with a partial scholarship, I cried tears of profound relief. It wouldn't cover everything, but it was a start. A glimmer of hope in the pervasive financial gloom. College was a constant, grueling hustle. I took 18 credits each semester while working 38 hours a week at a campus coffee shop and another 10 as a research assistant. I sent money home monthly because Leo needs braces, or the car broke down again. Meanwhile, I survived on instant ramen and free coffee, often staying in the library until closing, to save on electricity in my tiny, cramped apartment. My hard work paid off academically. I graduated with a perfect 4.0 GPA and a degree in finance. While my classmates had their families cheering wildly in the audience, my parents arrived late and left early. Dad had a golf game, and Mom didn't want to fight weekend traffic. A familiar sting of disappointment quickly buried. The entry-level position at Sterling Financial Solutions came through a career fair. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the growth potential was immense. I threw myself into the job with the same intensity I'd approached college. 12-hour days were standard. I volunteered for the accounts nobody wanted, tackling complex cases with fierce determination. I took professional development courses on weekends, hungry for knowledge and advancement. Within 3 years, I'd been promoted twice. By year 5, I was a senior financial analyst managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients. My most recent promotion came with a substantial raise that finally allowed me to begin saving aggressively. Over 3 years, I squirreled away $88,000, every single dollar earmarked for my dream, opening my own financial consulting firm, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I had meticulously developed a business plan projecting costs down to the last paperclip. I'd scouted locations, settling on a modest office space in a developing part of downtown. The leasing agent had already sent over preliminary paperwork. My birthday seemed like the perfect symbolic day to finalize everything a rebirth of sorts into entrepreneurship. The $88,000 would cover 6 months of rent office setup marketing licensing insurance and a small salary cushion until clients started generating revenue. It was tight, but doable. I'd run the numbers dozens of times, adjusting variables, planning for every contingency. This was my moment, my chance to build something truly mine. Little did I know that the morning of my birthday would set in motion events that would shatter everything. Not just my business plans, but my entire relationship with my family. The betrayal unveiled. On the morning of my 28th birthday, I woke up early, buzzing with excitement for the day ahead. Despite planning to take the afternoon off to sign my business lease, I still followed my usual morning routine. Coffee in hand, I checked my accounts on my banking app, something I did daily as a financial professional. I nearly dropped my mug when I saw the balance. My dedicated business account, which had held a solid $88,000 the previous day, now showed a measly $21,247. For a heart-stopping moment, I was certain it was a technical glitch. I logged out and back in. Same chilling balance. I checked my transaction history, and there it was, transferred to external account processed at 11:43 p.m. the previous night. My hands trembling uncontrollably, I immediately called the bank's fraud department. After 20 agonizing minutes of security questions and holds, the representative delivered the crushing news. Ms. Hayes, this transfer was authorized using your credentials. It went to an account at First National under the names Arthur and Martha Hayes. According to our records, you've transferred money to this account before. That's my parents' account. I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. But I didn't authorize this transfer. The representative explained they could investigate further, but since it went to an account I'd previously sent money to, and my credentials were used, it would be treated as a disputed transaction rather than outright fraud. This meant it could take weeks, if not months, to resolve, if at all. I hung up, my mind reeling, and immediately called the bank branch where I'd conducted business for years. The manager, Philip, a kind man I'd known for ages, agreed to review security footage from the ATM located in my apartment building's lobby. Within an hour, he called back with disturbing news. Aurora, I'm sorry, but the footage shows your father using the ATM in your building last Tuesday around 3:00 p.m. Wasn't that when he visited you for lunch? The pieces of the horrifying puzzle suddenly clicked into place. Dad had asked to use my bathroom while visiting. My laptop, still logged into my banking account, was on my bedroom desk. He must have seen my password saved in the browser and used it to access my account later. The cold realization sent a shiver down my spine. I drove to my parents' suburban home in a daze, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and fury. Their new SUV, a sleek, expensive model, sat gleefully in the driveway, a purchase they'd made just 3 weeks ago, claiming it was a great deal they couldn't pass up. Now a sickening thought festered in my mind. What else couldn't they pass up with my $88,000? The ironic birthday surprise. When I walked in without knocking, Mom was arranging flowers in the living room, her face serene. Dad sat at the kitchen table, engrossed in his newspaper. What did you do? I demanded, my voice raw with emotion, shaking uncontrollably. Mom looked up, annoyed by the interruption. Well, hello to you too. Happy birthday. I held up my phone, shoving the bank transaction in her face. My money, all of it, gone, transferred to your account. Dad folded his newspaper calmly, as if discussing the weather. We needed to access those funds. Access? You mean steal? I screamed, the control I'd tried to maintain shattering. That was my business money, everything I've saved for 3 years. Mom rolled her eyes, a gesture that ignited a fresh wave of fury in me. What were you going to do, buy yourself a cake? The family needed it more, Dad added solemnly, his voice grave. Leo needs surgery. His insurance won't cover it. It's serious, Aurora. I stood there, speechless, my mind reeling. My brother Leo had mentioned feeling under the weather recently, but surgery? This was the first I'd heard of anything serious. Why wouldn't you talk to me first? Ask me, I would have helped if Leo really needed it. We knew you'd make a fuss, Mom said dismissively, waving a hand as if swatting away a fly. Always so dramatic about your money. It's not about the money, I shouted though. Of course it was partly about the money. It's about trust. You broke into my account. Dad slammed his hand on the table, the sudden noise making me jump. Family helps family, Aurora. Your brother needs the surgery, and you're sitting on a pile of cash for some pipe dream business that will probably fail anyway. His words cut deep, a brutal stab to my already wounded heart. My own father had so little faith in me that he'd rather steal my money than see me try to succeed. As we argued, the doorbell rang. Mom went to answer it, and suddenly the house was filling with people: Aunt Judith, Uncle Thomas, my cousins, and even my brother Leo. It was a surprise birthday dinner, apparently. The ultimate cruel irony. Leo looked confused when he saw my tear-streaked face. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, Dad spoke up, his voice dripping with false concern. "Your sister's upset because we borrowed some money for your medical bills." Leo's eyebrows shot up. "My what?" Uncle Thomas put a comforting arm around my shoulders. "Family has to stick together in times of need, kiddo. Your parents have sacrificed everything for you kids. A little financial help is the least you can do." Aunt Judith nodded emphatically. "When your Uncle Thomas needed a kidney, I didn't hesitate. That's what family does." I looked around the room, a chilling realization washing over me. I was surrounded by people who had no idea what had actually happened, but were already taking my parents' side. The betrayal was expanding, encompassing more and more people by the second. "Leo," I said carefully, my voice surprisingly steady, "what medical bills are they talking about?" My brother looked genuinely confused. "I had some tests for my stomach issues last month, but insurance covered it. I'm fine, just need to avoid dairy." The room fell silent, the cheerful chatter abruptly dying. Mom jumped in quickly, her voice a little too high. "The insurance denied the claim afterward. We got the bill last week." Leo was shaking his head. "No, they didn't. I checked my patient portal yesterday. Everything's processed and paid." I watched my parents' faces as their elaborate lie unraveled in front of the entire family. Dad's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Mom's brittle smile cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "There must be some confusion," Dad said, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. "We can discuss this later. Let's celebrate Aurora's birthday." But it was too late. I couldn't bear to stay in that house another minute surrounded by such blatant manipulation and lies. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, my legs moving on autopilot. "Aurora, don't be ridiculous," Mom called after me, her voice shrill. "Your cake is in the refrigerator." I turned back one last time, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "You stole my dream. A cake isn't going to fix that." As I walked out, I heard Uncle Thomas mutter, "Always so dramatic, that one." The door slammed shut behind me, and with it, something inside me shattered irrevocably. The family I thought I knew was gone, replaced by strangers who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. The storm, within and without. I drove aimlessly through the city streets, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the torrent of rain that had started to fall. How fitting, I thought bitterly, the weather perfectly mirroring my internal storm. Eventually, I found myself at Riverside Park, pulling into the scenic overlook that offered a panoramic view of the city's skyline. In the fading daylight, the buildings twinkled like distant stars, oblivious to my collapsing world. Finally alone, I let the tears come, huge, racking sobs that left me gasping for breath. I cried for the money, yes, for the business dreams that had been cruelly snatched away. But more, I cried for the betrayal, the casual, dismissive way they had brushed aside my aspirations, the elaborate, heartless lie about Leo's health, the crushing fact that my own father thought nothing of stealing from me. As the tears subsided, memories surfaced, a painful montage of financial manipulation throughout my life. My first paycheck at 16 taken for electricity bills. But somehow, Dad had a new expensive fishing rod that very weekend. The college scholarship money my parents insisted on managing for textbooks, which never seemed to materialize when I desperately needed them. The graduation money from relatives that disappeared into the family account before I could deposit it myself. I'd always made excuses for them. Times were tough, I'd tell myself. Dad's pride was hurt after losing his job. Mom was stressed from working 2 jobs. They did the best they could. But now, with clear, unblinking eyes, I saw the insidious pattern. This wasn't new behavior. It was just the most extreme, brazen version of what they'd been doing my entire life, using me as their personal ATM while treating my financial needs as frivolous and unimportant. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe, my best friend since college. "Happy birthday drinks tonight." I called her instead of texting back. The moment she answered, I broke down again, the dam of my composure bursting. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Chloe at our favorite cafe, clutching a mug of tea with shaking hands as I recounted the day's devastating events. "The worst part," I choked out, tears still streaming down my face, "is that they lied about Leo being sick. Who does that—" Chloe reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her expression one of profound sympathy. "Aurora, I hate to add to this, but I need to tell you something. Your mom called me last month asking if I could loan them money. She said you were being selfish with your savings, and they needed help with house repairs." I stared at her, stunned. "What you never told me?" I shut it down immediately, told her I was broke from student loans, which isn't exactly a lie. Chloe sighed, her gaze regretful. "I should have told you, but I didn't want to create drama. I'm so sorry." The betrayal deepened, a sickening realization. They had been trying to tap my social circle for money, simultaneously painting me as the villain. The following days passed in a blur of emotional and physical symptoms. Sleep evaded me, leaving dark, bruised circles under my eyes. Food lost its appeal, every bite feeling like ash. Anxiety attacks ambushed me at random moments in the grocery store during meetings, even while brushing my teeth. I called in sick to work for the first time in my career, utterly unable to focus on spreadsheets while my personal finances lay in ruins. On the third day of my absence, my boss, Eleanor, called. "Aurora, is everything okay? This isn't like you." The genuine concern in her voice broke something open in me. I found myself telling her everything: the theft, the lies, the cruel birthday ambush. "I'm sorry," I said, utterly mortified by my unprofessional breakdown. "I'll be back tomorrow." "No," Eleanor said firmly, her voice unwavering. "Take the rest of the week. And Aurora, I understand more than you know. My father emptied my college fund for a boat when I was 18. Some family members see your success as something they're entitled to." Her words landed like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. I wasn't alone in this agonizing experience. I wasn't crazy for feeling utterly violated. The truth uncovered, the plan tried back. In my apartment, I wandered from room to room like a ghost, the space that had once felt like a sanctuary, now tainted. Dad had been here in my personal space, meticulously planning his theft. Had he snooped through my things, read my detailed business plan, laughed at my carefully constructed dreams? I found myself pulling out old photo albums, searching for any evidence that my childhood memories were real. Perhaps that there had been genuine love mixed in with the relentless manipulation. In a dusty box of old family documents, I found something unexpected: the original paperwork for my parents' mortgage dated 10 years ago, when they refinanced the house. There on the final page was my signature. I had just turned 18 at the time. They had said they needed me as a reference since they were adjusting their loan terms. I remembered the thick stack of papers they'd had me sign, explaining nothing, as I scribbled my name where indicated. I wasn't a reference, I was a co-signer. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The devastation and hurt began to crystallize into something harder, sharper, more focused. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had made me legally responsible for their substantial debt without my knowledge or consent. Looking at my signature on that damning document, I felt a cold, clear resolve replace the chaotic emotions of the past few days. If I was legally bound to their mortgage, then I had legal rights to it as well. My parents had taught me a valuable lesson, though not the one they intended. In their world, financial ties were more important than emotional ones. Fine, I could play by those rules too. I carefully set the mortgage document aside and began to formulate a plan. The financial analyst in me took over. If I was going to understand the full scope of what my parents had done, I needed data-complete information, no more operating on assumptions or emotional reactions. First, I needed to confirm my suspicions about how they'd spent my money. As a joint account holder on my childhood savings account, which I'd never removed myself from, I had legal access to my parents' banking records. I logged in using the credentials I'd set up years ago and had never changed. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The day after the $88,000 transfer, there were several large glaring purchases: a $32,000 transfer to a car dealership, $7,500 to elite golf supplies, $4,200 to luxury leather goods, and $12,000 to Caribbean cruise lines. No medical payments, no hospital bills, nothing remotely related to healthcare for Leo or anyone else. My next step was to call my brother directly. We'd always been close despite the 4-year age gap. He answered on the second ring, his voice tinged with concern. "Aurora, are you okay? You left so suddenly at the dinner." "Leo, I need to ask you something important. Are you having medical issues that Mom and Dad are paying for?" He sounded genuinely confused. "No, I told you I had some tests for stomach pain last month, but it turned out to be lactose intolerance. Insurance covered everything except a $20 copay, which I paid myself. They didn't pay thousands of dollars for some procedure. No denied claims, no upcoming surgery. What? No, where is this coming from?" I took a deep breath and told him everything: the stolen money, our parents' outrageous claims about his medical needs, the luxury purchases I'd discovered. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then his voice quiet. "They bought a new car the day after your birthday. Mom has a new purse she was showing off to Aunt Judith. Dad's been talking about his new custom golf clubs." My stomach clenched. Did they say where the money came from? Dad said he got a bonus at work, but Aurora, he's been saying business is slow for months. A moment of dawning horror. "They used me as an excuse to steal from you." The raw disgust in his voice mirrored my own feelings. At least I wasn't alone in them. My investigation continued. I pulled my credit report, searching meticulously for any other accounts they might have opened in my name. Thankfully, there were none, but the mortgage was clearly listed a $320,000 loan, with my name as co-signer. Next, I looked more closely at the mortgage documents I'd found. According to the paperwork, I wasn't just a co-signer. I was a joint borrower with equal responsibility for the debt. If they defaulted, my credit would be ruined alongside theirs. I called my friend Maya, who worked as a real estate attorney. "Let me get this straight," she said after I explained the shocking situation. "They had you sign mortgage papers when you were barely 18, didn't explain what you were signing, and have now stolen your savings." "That's about the size of it," I replied, my voice flat. "Aurora, this is serious. As a co-signer, you're legally responsible for that loan if they don't pay. But the flip side is that you also have legal rights to the property. What kind of rights depends on exactly how the deed and mortgage are structured, but potentially significant ones. Send me the paperwork and I'll review it." 2 days later, Maya confirmed what I'd suspected. Because I was a joint borrower on the mortgage, I had legal standing to communicate with the lender about the loan and under certain circumstances to take action regarding the property. Armed with this crucial information, I reached out to Kenneth Dorsey, a senior manager at my bank who had handled several of my high-net-worth clients' transactions. I explained my situation carefully, leaving out the emotional details and sticking strictly to the financial facts. "This is an unusual situation." Kenneth acknowledged, his voice thoughtful. "But not unprecedented. As a joint borrower, you have options." He outlined several possibilities from refinancing the loan in my name only, which would require my parents' cooperation, to initiating foreclosure proceedings if payments were delinquent. "Are they current on the mortgage?" he asked. I checked the payment history through the online portal. To my surprise, they were 3 months behind, even before taking my money. "No, they're behind on payments." Kenneth's voice turned serious. "Then you have significant leverage. The bank is already considering action. As a joint borrower with good credit and a solid income, you could potentially take over the loan under modified terms." Leverage. It was a word I used often in financial negotiations for my clients. I never thought I'd be using it against my own parents. The confrontation and its aftermath over the next week, I methodically gathered evidence and explored my options. I documented every conversation, every bank transaction, every piece of the sickening puzzle. I reviewed their spending patterns over the past year, finding a troubling picture of escalating financial irresponsibility. Luxury purchases, large cash withdrawals at casinos' credit card payments. Only making minimum requirements, all while claiming they couldn't help Leo with college expenses while taking my money for emergencies that mysteriously coincided with vacation bookings and shopping sprees. The more I uncovered, the more my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about the $88,000, though, that still represented my immediate business dreams. This was about decades of financial manipulation and a fundamental breach of trust. By the end of the week, I had developed a 3-stage plan: confront my parents with irrefutable evidence and demand full repayment. If they refused to exercise my legal rights regarding the mortgage, permanently separate my finances from theirs and establish clear non-negotiable boundaries. The financial analyst in me had mapped out every contingency, every possible response. The daughter in me hoped it wouldn't come to the worst-case scenario, but I was prepared if it did. I texted both my parents on a Tuesday morning. "We need to talk about what happened. Dinner at my place 7 p.m. Mom responded immediately. "Finally coming to your senses. We'll bring dessert." The casual, infuriating response with no acknowledgement of what they'd done only strengthened my resolve. I spent the afternoon preparing not just dinner, but my entire approach. On my dining room table, I placed 3 neatly labeled folders, one containing bank statements showing the unauthorized transfer, another with documentation of their extravagant spending after taking my money, and a third with the damning mortgage documents bearing my signature as co-borrower. When the doorbell rang at 6:58 p.m., I took a deep breath and smoothed my expression into a neutral mask, the same one I wore during difficult client meetings. "Happy belated birthday," Mom chirped, handing me a small bakery box. "Chocolate cake, your favorite." As if a slice of cake could possibly make up for $88,000. I accepted it silently and led them to the dining room where place settings and water glasses waited. "No wine tonight," I stated, my voice calm. "I need clarity." "No food?" Dad asked, looking at the empty plates, a hint of annoyance in his tone. "I thought we should talk first." I sat down and gestured for them to do the same. Mom's smile faltered. "If this is about the money we've already explained—" "Please," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Let me speak first." I opened the first folder and laid out the bank statements. "This shows the unauthorized transfer of $88,000 from my account to yours. The bank has confirmed this was done using my login credentials, which Dad obtained when he visited my apartment last week." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Now, Aurora." I held up my hand again, cutting him off, and continued opening the second folder. "These are records of purchases made immediately after you received my money: a new car, golf clubs designer, handbags, a cruise booking." I turned to the third folder. "And this is the mortgage I apparently co-signed when I was 18. Something you told me was just a reference form. I've confirmed with the bank that you're 3 months behind on payments." The color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with controlled anger. "What's your point?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. My point, I said, my voice rising slightly, filled with a newfound steely resolve, is that you lied about Leo's medical needs, about the mortgage, about needing my money for an emergency. You stole from me, and you've been financially manipulating me my entire life.
We're your parents, Mom snapped, her voice cracking. Everything we've ever done was for this family.
Really? I challenged, my voice cutting through hers. How do designer handbags and golf clubs benefit the family? How does putting me on your mortgage without my knowledge benefit me? You're being dramatic, Dad said dismissively, attempting to regain control. We raised you, put a roof over your head, fed you. I worked since I was 16. I countered, my voice trembling but firm. I contributed to household expenses throughout high school and college. I've sent you money every month since I started working. And now you have a fancy job and think you're better than us, Mom said bitterly, her eyes narrowed in accusation. Too good to help your family.
I took a deep breath, fighting to maintain my composure, clinging to the calm facade I'd perfected at work. I would have helped if you'd asked if there was a real need, but you didn't ask, you took, and you lied about why.
What do you want from us? Dad asked, clearly wanting to end the conversation to escape the harsh light of truth. I want my money back, all of it. They exchanged uneasy glances. We don't have it, Mom said, her voice small. It's spent. Not all of it. The bank records show $32,000 went to the dealership. Return the car. Absolutely not, Dad thundered, slamming his hand on the table again. We need that car. Then sell the house. You've got plenty of equity. Mom laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. Sell our home over a little family disagreement. I slid the mortgage document toward them. Did you know that as a co-borrower, I have legal rights regarding this property, including the right to force a sale if the loan is in default, which it is? The smug expressions dropped from their faces, replaced by genuine shock. You wouldn't, Dad whispered, his voice barely audible. I already have.
I pulled out a final document, the notification from the bank that I had assumed primary communication authority on the mortgage. As of today, I'm the primary contact for the loan. All correspondence will come to me, and I've declined the bank's offer to set up a payment plan for the delinquency.
What does that mean? Mom asked, her voice small and tight for the first time. It means, I said, meeting their stunned gazes with unwavering conviction, that unless you return my money, foreclosure proceedings will begin in 30 days. Dad slammed his fist on the table one last time, his face contorted in a mask of rage. This is extortion. No, Dad, I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. This is consequences, something you taught me about, remember. They left in a fury of slammed doors and angry threats. I stood in my kitchen, shaking but resolute. The ball was in their court now. The next few days brought a barrage of calls and texts, first angry, then pleading, then outright manipulative. Mom claimed she was having chest pains from stress. Dad said they'd be homeless. Aunt Judith called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. I blocked their numbers one by one, steeling myself against the emotional onslaught. A week later, my brother Leo showed up at my door, his face etched with confusion. They told me you're trying to take their house, he said, his voice laced with disbelief. I invited him in, and with a heavy heart showed him everything, the undeniable evidence, the years of lies, the systematic financial manipulation. They used your health as an excuse, Leo. They stole my business savings and spent it on luxury items. He sat in stunned silence, processing the devastating truth. I had no idea. All these years I thought they were supporting you through college. They told me you had a full scholarship, but they were taking your money. They've been taking my money since I was 16. He shook his head slowly, a profound sadness in his eyes. What can I do? Just understand why I'm doing this, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm not trying to hurt them. I just want what's mine, and I can't let them keep manipulating me.
2 weeks after our dinner, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my father calling from a friend's phone. We'll give you the money back, he said without preamble, his voice devoid of its usual bluster, tinged with a grudging defeat. We've listed the car for sale. We can get $30,000 for it, and the rest, we're working on it. Your mother's selling her jewelry. I've got some investments I can cash out.
I'll need it in writing, I stipulated, my voice firm. A legally binding repayment agreement. He started to protest, then stopped himself. Fine, whatever it takes. The next day, I had Maya draw up a repayment agreement. My parents signed it with clenched jaws and averted eyes, their defeat palpable. They made the first payment of $35,000, the proceeds, from selling the SUV and Mom's designer collection, directly to my business account. The remaining balance would be paid in monthly installments of $3,000. The agreement included a clear provision: any missed payment would trigger my right to force a sale of the house. It wasn't the swift, satisfying justice part of me had wanted. It wasn't the full amount immediately returned. But it was a start, and more importantly, it was a line in the sand, a boundary established and critically enforced.
I contacted the bank and agreed to bring the mortgage current, protecting my own credit, while ensuring my parents understood the seriousness of their actions. I remained the primary contact for the loan, and the insurance policy a safeguard against future delinquency. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. For the first time in my life, my parents couldn't manipulate me financially. They had tried their ultimate power play and lost. As I signed the bank paperwork officially making me the primary borrower on the mortgage, I felt no joy or vindication, just a quiet, profound resolve. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and protecting my future.
Rebuilding and reclaiming the days following the repayment agreement brought an eerie quiet. No calls from my parents, no messages from extended family. It was as if I'd been erased from the Hayes family history, a consequence I had anticipated, but still found profoundly painful. The silence broke a week later when my phone lit up with a message from Leo. They're selling everything: Dad's golf clubs, Mom's purse collection, even that painting from the living room. They're not happy, but they're doing it. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, satisfaction that they were honoring the agreement, sadness that it had come to this, and lingering anger that they'd put all of us in this untenable position in the first place.
Leo kept me updated on the family fallout. My parents had apparently told the extended family a highly edited version of events that I was forcing them to sell their possessions over a misunderstanding about a loan. Some relatives took their side immediately. Uncle Thomas called me a heartless gold digger in the family group chat. Aunt Sarah sent a scripture verse about honoring thy father and mother. But as Leo quietly shared the true story with a few cousins, perspective began to shift. My cousin Mia called to apologize for believing my parents' version. They've always been weird about money, she admitted. They borrowed $5,000 from my dad 3 years ago and never paid it back. Aunt Sarah eventually reached out with a tentative olive branch. I still think families should work things out privately, she said. But using Leo's health as an excuse was wrong. I'm sorry I judged without knowing the facts.
Uncle Thomas, however, remained firmly in my parents' camp, sending occasional texts about how I was tearing the family apart for money. I added his number to my blocked list after the third message. Meanwhile, I had to adjust my business plans. Even with the initial $35,000 recovered and monthly payments coming in, I was still short of my original startup capital. The grand office downtown was no longer feasible. Instead, I found a small office space in a converted warehouse, 1/3 the size of my original choice, but with significantly lower rent. I scaled back my marketing budget and decided to handle the bookkeeping myself initially, rather than hiring an assistant.
Eleanor proved to be an unexpected, invaluable ally in this process. "Take me to coffee and show me this business plan of yours," she said one afternoon after a client meeting. Over lattes, I laid out my vision for a financial consultancy focused on helping women achieve independence. Eleanor listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. "Your projections are solid," she said when I finished. "But your marketing plan is too conservative. You need to leverage your network more effectively." She became an informal mentor, offering astute advice on everything from client acquisition to fee structures. When I mentioned the reduced budget due to my parents' theft, she connected me with vendors who offered favorable terms to startups. "I believe in what you're building," she said, her eyes warm with encouragement. "And I know what it's like to start over after family takes advantage." My colleagues at Sterling Financial were similarly supportive. When I gave notice explaining my plans to open my own firm, several offered to refer clients who didn't meet Sterling's high minimum investment threshold. Others provided introductions to service providers and professional organizations. The recovery process wasn't just financial, it was deeply emotional as well. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma, working through the complex feelings of betrayal, guilt, and grief. She helped me recognize that my parents' behavior reflected their issues, not my worth. "Financial abuse is real," Dr. Larson explained during one session, her voice gentle yet firm. "And it often comes disguised as family obligation or parental authority. Recognizing it doesn't make you ungrateful or selfish." Those words became a mantra as I rebuilt my life and business plans. Leo and I established a new relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than shared family mythology. He began asking for my advice on his own finances, determined not to repeat our parents' patterns. I never realized how much they manipulated money situations, he admitted during one of our weekly coffee meetings. Looking back, there were so many red flags. We both missed them. "We were trained to," I assured him. A new chapter 3 months after the confrontation, my parents had repaid 44,000 days of the stolen money. Each payment arrived exactly on schedule, not a day early or late. Never with a note or message, just electronic transfers with the reference number from our legal agreement. I used that money to secure a small business loan for the remaining startup costs. The loan officer, impressed by my detailed business plan and the regular income stream from the repayment agreement, approved the application despite my adjusted collateral. 6 months after my birthday, Hayes Financial Independence opened its doors.
A modest space, but with big ambitions. The name was deliberate, both a reclamation of my family name and a bold statement of purpose. My first clients were referrals from Eleanor and former colleagues, mostly young professional women looking to establish solid financial foundations. As for my parents, we established a strictly transactional relationship. All communication went through the payment portal, or when necessary, through brief business-like emails. They made no attempts at reconciliation beyond fulfilling their financial obligation. Part of me had hoped, perhaps naively, that facing consequences would inspire reflection or remorse, that they might eventually acknowledge the harm they'd done and genuinely apologize. But as months passed with mechanical payments and stony silence, I accepted that such transformation might never come. And slowly I made peace with that reality. I couldn't control their response, only my own boundaries and actions. The money was being repaid. My business was growing. My relationship with Leo was stronger than ever. Those were the victories I chose to focus on. The family that had raised me might be lost, but in its place I was building something new, a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and clients who respected boundaries and celebrated success rather than exploiting it. It wasn't the happy ending I would have written, but it was real, and it was mine. 1 year to the day after discovering my parents' theft, I stood in the center of my office watching as a small crowd gathered for the official grand opening celebration of Hayes' financial independence. The space, once a sparse room with minimal furniture, had transformed into a welcoming environment with comfortable seating, tasteful artwork, and state-of-the-art financial planning technology. Chloe arrived first, carrying a ridiculously large bouquet. "From all of us who believed in you," she said, placing it on the reception desk. Eleanor followed shortly after, bringing a bottle of champagne and a card signed by my former colleagues. Leo came with his new girlfriend, both beaming with pride as they toured the office. As I gave a short speech thanking everyone for their unwavering support, I caught sight of the company logo on the wall behind me, a stylized phoenix rising. It felt fitting. From the ashes of betrayal, something new and powerful had emerged. Hayes' financial independence had evolved in unexpected ways over the past year. What began as a general financial consultancy had found its niche, helping people identify and escape financial abuse and manipulation. Many of my clients were women extricating themselves from controlling relationships. Others were young professionals setting firm boundaries with financially exploitative family members. My personal experience, once a source of shame, had become my greatest professional asset. I understood these clients in ways other financial advisors couldn't. I could spot the subtle signs of financial manipulation, validate their experiences with genuine empathy, and guide them toward independence without judgment. My parents had repaid $77,000 of the $88,000 they took. Each month, the $3,000 transfer arrived precisely on schedule, the only consistent communication we maintained. They had never apologized, never acknowledged the profound betrayal beyond the legally required repayment. I had attempted to establish limited contact after 6 months, sending a neutral email, suggesting we might meet for coffee. The response had been disappointing, but not surprising. "We'll discuss rebuilding our relationship after the debt is fully repaid." As if my trust could be purchased back on an installment plan, Leo had maintained his relationship with our parents, though it had changed fundamentally. He no longer accepted their version of events without question. He verified any financial claims they made. He refused to discuss me or my business with them. "They ask about you sometimes," he told me during one of our weekly dinners. "I think Mom regrets how things happened, but Dad's pride won't let him admit they were wrong. Do you think they'll ever change?" I considered the question carefully. I don't know. Maybe not in the ways we'd hoped for, but they're not taking advantage of me financially anymore, so that's something. It was something indeed. Small victories counted. My relationship with my extended family had fractured along predictable lines. Some, like Aunt Sarah, had made efforts to understand my perspective and maintain a relationship. Others, like Uncle Thomas, remained firmly entrenched in my parents' camp, viewing me as the villain who had torn the family apart over money. I had learned to accept this division without trying to change minds. Those who wanted the full story would seek it out. Those who preferred the simplified narrative of ungrateful daughter versus sacrificing parents would cling to it regardless of evidence. The chosen family I'd built around me filled the gaps left by these broken relationships. Chloe and Eleanor had become my closest confidants. My small team at the firm, an assistant and a junior advisor, felt more like partners than employees. Leo and I had developed a deeper bond built on honesty and mutual respect, rather than shared family mythology. My first client after opening the firm had been a woman named Tara, referred by a domestic violence shelter. She had left an abusive marriage with nothing but her children, and a mountain of debt her husband had accumulated in her name. When she first sat in my office, she couldn't make eye contact, convinced her financial situation was hopeless. 6 months later, she had established credit in her own name, secured stable housing, and begun building an emergency fund. When she brought me a small plant as a thank you gift, she finally met my eyes. "You treated me like a person, not a victim," she said, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. "You showed me I could take control again." Her words had crystallized the purpose of my business in a way no business plan could have articulated. This was why the betrayal had happened, so I could recognize these patterns and help others break them. I had found forgiveness, though not in the way most people might expect. I hadn't absolved my parents of responsibility or welcomed them back into my life without accountability. Instead, I'd found a way to be grateful for the harsh lessons they'd taught me, lessons that now helped others. True forgiveness, I discovered, wasn't about erasing boundaries. It was about finding peace within them. I no longer carried anger or resentment about what had happened. I had accepted that my parents were flawed people who had made terrible choices. I had protected myself from further harm while leaving the door cracked open for genuine reconciliation should they ever choose that path.
On my 29th birthday, a stark contrast to the previous year's disaster, I celebrated with a small gathering at my apartment. Chloe, Eleanor, Leo, and a few close friends brought gifts, laughter, and no family drama. As I blew out the candles on a cake I had proudly bought myself, I made a silent wish not for reconciliation with my parents, but for continued strength to maintain the healthy boundaries I'd established.
Later that evening, as the party wound down, Leo handed me a small box. "I found this in my old stuff. Thought you might want it." Inside was a faded photograph of us as children building a sandcastle at the beach. Mom and Dad stood in the background, smiling genuinely at their children's joy. "I remember that day," I said softly, a bittersweet ache in my chest. "It was good. Some of it was good. That's the complicated part, isn't it?" Leo agreed. "Holding the good memories alongside the bad choices." He was right. The most difficult lesson had been learning to hold these contradictions, that my parents could have loved me and still exploited me, that I could love them and still protect myself from them, that family ties were valuable but not at the expense of self-respect. As my guests left and I surveyed the empty wine glasses and cake plates, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was from my father, the first direct communication in months. "The final payment has been made. The debt is cleared. Your mother and I would like to meet if you're willing." I stared at the screen for a long moment, considering my response. The money had been repaid in full, a victory by itself. But the deeper wounds remained unaddressed. Would meeting them reopen those wounds? Or might it be the first step toward a new, healthier relationship built on mutual respect? Rather than financial exploitation, I didn't have to decide immediately. The boundary I'd established gave me the freedom to respond on my own timeline from a position of strength rather than obligation. Whatever happened next would be on my terms. That was perhaps the greatest achievement of the past year, reclaiming my power to choose to set limits to determine who had access to my life and under what conditions. From financial victim to advocate, from dutiful daughter to independent woman, from someone whose boundaries were repeatedly violated to someone who stood firmly in her own worth. That was a journey worth celebrating, regardless of where the path led next. The takeaway lesson: the power of boundaries. This story isn't just about money. It's a powerful testament to the absolute necessity of setting and enforcing boundaries, especially with family. Financial abuse disguised as family help or entitlement can be incredibly insidious and destructive. It erodes trust, undermines self-worth, and can derail your dreams. My journey taught me that while love and family bonds are important, they should never come at the cost of your financial well-being or your personal integrity. Protecting your hard-earned resources and your future is not selfish. It is essential self-preservation. True love and respect involve honesty, accountability, and a recognition of each person's autonomy. Don't be afraid to demand what is yours and to protect yourself from those who would exploit your generosity. What would you do if you were in my position? Would you meet with parents who betrayed your trust but repaid the money? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family over financial issues? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences and insights. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about financial independence and healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't measured by how much you give to those who take advantage of you.